Back in my day, if you wanted to play with virtual Pokémon cards, you had to do it looking like this on the Game Boy.
Thank goodness that technology has advanced since then, because the Pokémon Trading Card Game looks great, but seems to be a bit hit and miss on the overall functionality. So instead of talking about the game itself, we're going to cover the trading part of the trading card game. When I was a kid, Pokémon cards were the closest thing I had to real currency. We would crowd around each other on the playground and trade for the newest and coolest cards. And with so many trades happening, making sure you got the best trade for your Pokémon cards was essential. And all these years later, the concept still remains for anyone trading Pokémon cards. Whether you want cards to build a deck, or you're just a collector, negotiating with others to get the cards you want is an essential skill to becoming a Pokémon master. So today, we're going to talk about a simple 4-step negotiation process consisting of preparation, pre-bargaining, bargaining, and closing to help you get the most out of your Pokémon card trades. This is What I Learned Playing the Pokémon Trading Card Game. Failing to prepare is preparing to fail. I know that isn't the most creative phrase, but it's true nonetheless, especially when it comes to trading Pokémon cards. Preparation is the most important part of the negotiation process, because the more you prepare, the more knowledge you'll have, which puts you in a much stronger position during the bargaining phase. There are a ton of ways to prepare for a negotiation, but the primary way I want to cover is knowing the value of what you have. This should be done before you even think about approaching someone to trade cards or entertain offers from other people. Because if you don't know what the value of your cards are, you open yourself up to being taken advantage of. Like I was when I traded my holographic Venusaur to one of the neighborhood kids for a Beedrill. Thanks, Nate. However, if I had taken the time to know the value of my card, I would have been able to recognize that it was a bad trade and negotiate for a card of similar value. There are 2 types of value you can use when assessing your Pokémon cards: objective value and subjective value. Objective value is based on facts. Think of things like data, trends, card conditions, rarity, etc. They're a bit more tangible and observable, while subjective value is based more on personal bias, opinions, and experiences. So let's take a look at how these types of value can be applied to a specific Pokémon card. Let's say you have a BlastoiseEX card you want to know the value of. Finding the objective value of a Pokémon card has never been easier. Sites like TCG Player have a large database full of current and historic values of most trading cards. At the time of writing, this card, in good condition, has an objective value of $2.70, which is pretty decent. However, here's why you shouldn't just use objective value as a one-to-one negotiation tool. If you only relied on objective value, a fair trade for your BlastoiseEX card would be 18 non-holographic protective goggles trainer cards, since their combined value is approximately $2.70. And while that would technically be an even trade, it probably wouldn't feel like one. That's because the Blastoise has more subjective value than the 18 trainer cards with an equivalent objective value. Pokémon card collectors generally view trainer cards as less valuable, especially if they don't actively play the trading card game. While a Blastoise card, on the other hand, holds more subjective value because of his widespread popularity and appeal as a Pokémon. Subjective value varies from person to person, but if you can understand that your card's true value is a combination of subjective and objective value, that will put you in an outstanding position to enter the next phase of negotiation. Now that you know the value of what you have, it's time to enter the pre-bargaining phase, and a key piece of that is knowing your preferred outcome for a negotiation, especially if you're the one who's initiating it. Are you looking for specific cards to complete a deck? Do you need a specific holographic to complete your collection? Or do you need all 5 special cards to summon Exodia, the Forbidden One? Oh, wait, wrong card game. Regardless, once you know your preferred outcome of the negotiation, you can determine what you're willing to trade to achieve it. Ask yourself this: what cards are you willing to give up? Are there any cards you don't want to get rid of? You need to decide ahead of time if you're willing to trade your Charizard or not, because making that type of determination in the heat of the moment can lead to a bad judgment call you may regret later when things have calmed down. The other thing I would recommend doing in the pre-bargaining phase is learning more about the person you want to trade with. I'm not talking about learning their daily habits or anything creepy, but getting to know what and how they trade. Things like, do they have a reputation for making fair trades? Are they pushy or a pushover? Do they know the value of the cards they have? What specific Pokemon do they like to trade for? You may not be able to answer all of these questions, but the more you know about who you're trading with, the better a potential trade can go. For example, I have a soft spot for the original 151 Pokemon, especially Blastoise. So realistically, if you're trading with me, you're going to need to give me more to get one of my Blastoise cards. Conversely, since Blastoise is my favorite Pokemon, I'm probably willing to give up more of my cards to you to get one due to the subjective value I ascribe to it. This is extremely helpful to know going into a trade, because you can refine your initial trade offer based on this information. Equipping yourself with an ample amount of knowledge before the bargaining phase is essential to your negotiation success. Knowing what your cards are worth, the goal of your trade, and who you're trading with are the best assets when heading into the bargaining phase. The bargaining phase is where you put your preparation into action and attempt to make a deal. Bargaining is about finding a mutual and equitable trade for both people involved in the negotiation. However, not everyone enters the bargaining phase with this attitude, and their goal is to get the most value from you while giving you the least value back. The best way to defend against this is to use all of the knowledge and preparation we've already talked about. That way, you don't get swindled out of your cards. When making an initial offer during the bargaining phase, you must clearly articulate what you want from the other party and what you're willing to trade in return. This could be as simple as telling me, "Hey Eric, I want to trade my Venusaur-EX for your BlastoiseEX." That statement clearly articulates the starting point for our bargaining to take place. Now, this doesn't happen often, but sometimes you'll make an initial offer and the other person will accept it right away. If that's the case, then great. However, that usually isn't the case, and your initial offer will likely be met with a counteroffer, which is totally normal. According to Investopedia, a counteroffer means that the original offer was rejected and replaced with another one. So in the case of our previous offer, your Venusaur-EX for my BlastoiseEX, I would turn down your initial offer and make a counteroffer asking you to add a Rhydon, my second favorite Pokemon, to help ease my discomfort of trading my Blastoise. You have two options at this point: accept my counteroffer or make your own. The counteroffer duration differs from negotiation to negotiation, but don't be surprised if there are a few counteroffers from both sides before it's finished. Remember, you can always walk away from a negotiation. Just because you entered into the bargaining phase doesn't mean you have to complete a transaction, especially if it's not in your favor. For our purposes today, let's assume you agreed to my initial counteroffer of my BlastoiseEX for your Venusaur-EX and a Rhydon, which means we can move into the closing phase. When it comes to the closing phase for trading Pokemon cards, it's quite simple. This is the point where you actually exchange the cards and they officially become the property of the other person. This is an exciting time because all of the preparation and bargaining have finally led to an outcome that both people feel good about. In negotiations outside of Pokemon cards, this is usually where a contract is signed or a new plan is put into action. The closing phase can be much more complex for transactions that are not Pokemon cards, but that doesn't mean you can't learn about closing through a lower stakes transaction like this. We have been using the Pokemon trading process as our core example of negotiation throughout this video, but you can apply the same process to any negotiation you have. Whether it's trying to buy a new car or negotiate for a higher salary at work, the negotiation process we talked about today, preparation, pre-bargaining, bargaining, and closing, can be used as the foundation of any negotiation. And if you ever get lost trying to negotiate, just think back to the Pokemon card example. Know the value of what you have so you get a mutually beneficial trade. And that's it. Which Pokemon cards in your collection have the most objective and subjective value? As you all know, I love Gen 1 Pokemon, so you can keep your Lucarios and Greninjas, they do nothing for me. Blastoise is where it's at. If you like what you saw today, I'd love for you to subscribe and come back for the next one. Until then, see you around.